Hi, my name is Molly Tipping and I am a Feldenkrais practitioner working in Perth, Western Australia, on the lands of the Whadjuk Noongar Nation. I'm going to share with you a little extra piece of work that comes off the back of the Nervous System Harmony workshop that I ran online live. These little bits are just kind of bits that maybe got missed or bits that I wanted to kind of reiterate and make more clear. So you can look at this kind of in isolation, not looking at the Nervous System Harmony workshop, but it might actually make more sense to view it in relation to the Nervous System Harmony workshop. We're going to be looking at the autonomic nervous system and specifically the sympathetic and the parasympathetic branches of the autonomic nervous system. And here I talk through how those nervous systems work in partnership and how they might work together. And I talk about sex and about managing your day and how you can find more understanding of how when we use one nervous system, what the consequence of that is for the other nervous system in a kind of an offsetting kind of way, and how you can intentionally create offsets in your day so you've got more energy and so you feel more calm and so you can actually succeed in the ways that you want to and get fit in both of your nervous systems. I hope you enjoy. The sympathetic is in charge of a whole heap of stuff and the parasympathetic is in charge of a whole heap of stuff. And sometimes we're going to be really sympathetic and sometimes we're going to be really parasympathetic and sometimes we're going to be recruiting a little bit of sympathetic activity and a little bit of parasympathetic. But we want to make sure that we kind of recognize the kind of natural flow between them. So if we kind of did something really sort of basic, we might sort of be able to go, okay, so during the day it's sympathetic, and in the evening, it's parasympathetic. So we're awake and we're active, and then we're resting, digesting, and sleeping here. And so this is something just to kind of go, oh yeah, actually that makes sense. We're, predominantly more sympathetic during the day and predominantly more parasympathetic in the evening. And you'll know if you have a very lazy day or you're not really kind of doing very much, and so you actually haven't had a lot of sympathetic activation, it's actually, your sleeping is actually not going to be so easy to get into. So having a kind of a good day with activities where you're thinking and you're engaging in life is actually going to be really important in helping you fall naturally into the parasympathetic and have a good sleep. But of course, we all know that sometimes during the day, you kind of exceed your sort of sympathetic kind of balance, the amount of sympathetic kind of activity that's really worthwhile. And actually what happens, unfortunately, is it's really then hard to drop. And that's when our sleeping is going to be really interrupted. And we just feel like we've kept ourselves awake for too long. We've kept ourselves busy without any breaks. And then we actually can't then have that natural descent. And Moshe Feldenkrais talks about this being the difference between being tired and being fatigued. So when we're tired, we get tired and we just fall asleep and it happens really organically. But when we get fatigued, that's like when the eye starts twitching and it's like, oh, my eye is twitching. I don't know why it's doing that. It's like actually we've moved into a system where instead of the brain kind of coordinating things in a kind of like organized fashion, it sort of starts kind of having little sort of cramps and, things are firing when they're not really meant to be firing. And that generally means we've been sympathetic for too long without a kind of dip into parasympathetic. So if we kind of think about a normal day, like maybe, we wake up and we kind of do some activities and then we have lunch and then we do some activities and then we have dinner and then we do some activities and then we're going to go to sleep. Okay. Maybe it would look something like that. So it's kind of, got that ebb and flow through the day with a pause for lunch and a pause for dinner, which is much more parasympathetic. When we are eating, we're going to be digesting food. As mentioned, if we're keeping really busy here and we don't have time to digest food, we might have like a little dip, but we're probably going to only be eating a muesli bar or something kind of quick. We're not going to be able to eat a big kind of vegetable-based, kind of legume-based meal. And I know for me, when I'm working, I can be really time poor for a long lunch, but on Thursdays, that's my day where I actually have a lot more time. And so that's the day where I'm going to go to my favorite cafe and I'm going to get a big load of salad and I'm going to get legumes. I'm going to get all those beautiful things that actually are going to kind of, be slow to digest. I'm going to need more time to digest them. I'm going to need much more of the hormones and bile to digest them. And so I'm going to actually take the time to make sure when I'm eating those big complex meals that I've got at least an hour or two afterwards to do proper digestion. Whereas if I have a short lunch break, I'm going to have something much more small and something that isn't as complex to digest, which is, really important so I don't get into digestion. So if we look at this in relation to sex or masturbation, because we didn't actually talk about this, one of the things that's really lovely about looking at this is we can actually see how the sympathetic and parasympathetic are supporting each other in a singular experience. So the reality is, in order to actually become aroused, in order for blood to move to the sexual organs, we actually need to relax. We actually need to let blood come out of the brain, let blood come out of the muscles, and we're going to actually kind of come down into parasympathetic or immobilizing activities. We're going to be more sensitive to touch. We're going to be in close proximity to people. We're going to be talking and cuddling, and all of these kinds of things are going to be happening. Some people will use alcohol to try and relax themselves, or they'll be using other kinds of experiences to relax themselves. But basically, in order for sexual arousal to occur, it's actually an act that occurs in the parasympathetic nervous system. And so this is why people might talk about getting an erection or getting engorged in the clitoris is actually not happening easily. And we think, there must be something to do with their sexual system. And sometimes, of course, there is. But a lot of the time, it's actually they're not able to slow down and to relax so that blood can fill these areas. So that's just a little thing sometimes we're not really sure about. And of course, once we've actually engorged the genitals, then we're going to go through the active phase of sex. We're going to romp about and it's going to be physical and lots of activity going there. And we're going to be getting very hot and sweaty. And then after sex, what happens? We cuddle, we relax. Sometimes we fall asleep. So what's happening is we're getting this kind of parasympathetic blood comes to the genitals, then blood goes out into the muscles of the body and we get hot and active. And then after we've had our romp about, then we get the beautiful afterglow, the beautiful come down, and then this sends us back into parasympathetic. And so this might be something that you really treasure as part of the sexual experience or part of the kind of masturbatory experience where you go, actually, this is just such a beautiful feeling after the actual kind of climax or orgasm. So I suppose, climax and orgasm kind of here as well at that peak point. And that can even sometimes be people's favorite part of that. Or if we're feeling really stressed, actually, what's really interesting is that we can use masturbation or sex to kind of push ourselves up so that we can then relax again back into our bodies. So what's lovely about looking at this in the sexual kind of context is how much actually the sympathetic and parasympathetic have to work in harmony for the whole thing to actually to go off really well. Now, if we maybe use this just kind of as the same model, we can also think about this in terms of if I have a good night's sleep, then I'm going to have energy for the day. If I have a nice kind of active day, not overly busy, but a good active day, like when you go camping and you're riding bikes and you're out in the wilderness and you really have this beautiful day that a nervous system goes, yeah, that was a great active day, then we're going to have a beautiful sleep that night. The other thing is in terms of, say, if I do some exercise, I'm going to kind of be out and busy and active and using my sympathetic system in the world. And then after that, my blood's going to come back to my digestive system, and then I'm going to, maybe go and have a chat with some people and kind of wind down after the exercise session, maybe go for a drink with, friends, and then I'm going to be having some food. Some people like to eat before they exercise, and some people don't like to eat because they feel like they're then going to not be able to have the energy to exercise because they've got to digest the food. Some people go, I just need a little small something, just a little quick thing, then I can exercise and then I'll have my big meal. So we're really looking at the balance of these things through the day and how it is that we can kind of be aware of how the nervous system works so we can actually work in harmony with it. Okay, so we're going to have a little look now at how the sleep cycle is a little bit affected with these rhythms and ebbs and flows between sympathetic and parasympathetic. So obviously during the night time when we're sleeping, we're predominantly parasympathetic. We're predominantly in that recuperative, restorative phase of the nervous system. But there are little kind of ebbs and flows, and every hour and a half we have these little wake-up points. And so if this is the wake-up line, we are whoop, whoop, and there's, this is not the proper REM kind of deep sleep image. It's a little bit more complicated than this. But at this point here, we actually start taking in information from the environment again. So our ears pick up information, our eyes pick up the light in the room, even though they're closed, we can get a sense of it. We're literally our skin becomes a little bit more awake. And so at this point here, we are heading toward that sympathetic. Now, if you are a bit overly sympathetic, as soon as you hit here, you're going to wake up and you'll be, I've got this to do and I've got this to do. You'll find that because the bias of the system is sympathetic, you're kicking into being awake in the middle of the night. You might get 1 or 2 sleep cycles, and then at 4 o'clock, suddenly you're like, oh, I'm up and I can't get back to sleep. And it's because you kind of were able to be in that parasympathetic state long enough for those sort of first 3 cycles, but then the 4th one, you're back up again. But some people find they're just waking up, and not kind of being able to get back to sleep. And that often what you'll find is you entirely miss out a sleep cycle and you're often awake for an hour and a half if you are awake at night and not getting that kind of wake up, fall asleep response. You might just wake up and be awake for an hour and a half, just not being able to sleep, but then you'll drop at the next kind of drop point. And so sometimes in those moments, it's really useful to go, well, I am awake. So, maybe I can pull out my journal and write a little bit in it. And maybe I'm awake because I'm still trying to sort of process a whole heap of stuff that's going on. I need to plan a few things. I need to kind of unpack an emotional conversation that's sort of unresolved. And where possible, we don't want to be doing all our processing work, at night or at 4 o'clock in the morning because it can interfere with our sleeping. But if it's happening occasionally, it's really a great time to be processing things because there's no one to bother us. We haven't got deadlines and timetables that we need to stick with. And so it's like, okay, well, let's pull out the journal and let's work through what's going on that is kind of rousing my sympathetic system into activity. Something is obviously calling me to action, and I can turn up to that. If this is happening a lot, you are not getting enough time during the day to process, analyze, think through, digest, metabolize the complexity of your day, and so your nervous system is then trying to do it at night. So if you're feeling like this is happening a lot, you might need to add in a little bit more intentionally parasympathetic downtime, processing time into your day, even particularly before you go to sleep at night. Take at least half an hour with a cup of tea, like chamomile tea or milk and honey or something like that, and a journal or a stretch on the floor to kind of start to wind the body down. Where possible, we don't want to be busy during the day and then have a crash response, because you're going to get a crash, kind of an opposite crash and wake up. You want to kind of be busy during the day and then you sort of slowly wind down, and you'll find you'll sleep much better if you allow for that more kind of harmonious, kind of gentle descent. Essentially, I'd say that's probably important to think about on the whole. The more that we're kind of going up and down and up and down, it's totally fine. Like, it's not a problem because the nervous system is still harmonizing itself in the ways that it does. But if we just kind of gently move between one and the other, we're actually just going to feel a lot more calm. We're going to feel a lot more like we're letting the blood move from one area to the other in a way that feels kind of more, harmonious for the body to do. Now, one of the things that we want to really start to be curious about is, well, how is this playing out in our lives, and how do we start to notice this in terms of the work that we're doing or the activities that we're engaging in? And so for me, like if I'm at work and I'm seeing, let's say, 4 clients, after about 4 clients, that's a point for me where I'm like, oh, actually, I feel like that's enough. I feel like I've had a good amount of work, and now I need a change, a shift, time for snacks, time to go for a walk, time to just kind of mix it up and do something different. Now, sometimes I do 3 clients and then it's a breeze. 2 clients, like, don't even know I've turned up to work. But 4 clients is like, that's a good amount for me. Now, occasionally, of course, my body wants to come down after 4, but I'm like, oh no, I've got a 5th client. I might kind of add someone in, or I might even kind of, very occasionally push to 6. But what's really, really interesting is that actually, because this is a natural kind of harmonizing rhythm for me around 4 clients, once I go to 5, I'm going to need a lot more downtime to actually recover from adding 1 extra client. So I add 1 extra client, but the offset for it is actually going to be longer or greater than that 1 extra client in terms of time. So it's really important to recognize, there's actually not really worth adding an extra client because the offset is far greater than that 1 extra client. But if I did do 6, I might actually crash and just be like, oh my God, I'm done for the day. So it's really to recognize, oh, this doesn't serve me. Now, it might be that when I first started doing Feldenkrais, after 2 clients, that was enough. And I was like, oh, 2's good. And now I need a rest because it's quite exhausting mentally and emotionally. And then I built fitness and was able to get to 3, and I've built fitness to get to 4. And I may build fitness to get to 5, or I may not. It's not something that's essential, but it's just recognizing this is my current capacity, and this is the best time for me to kind of recognize, 4 clients, that's good, and then we take a break. Now, one more thing that I want to make really, really clear is that the amount of sympathetic activation in your day, or the amount of parasympathetic kind of ability to drop, is going to be very much around that familiarity. But if I get, say, in a day, I've got a Parkinson's client, I've got a small child, I've got someone experiencing high levels of anxiety, and then I've got someone who wants to improve their running speed. So there's much more variety, or I have, let's say, 2 new clients in a day, I'm actually going to be much more sympathetic as a result of that. Yeah. So as soon as there's novelty, as soon as there's newness or unfamiliar experiences, it's actually going to be more sympathetic. So if I am turning up to uni the first week of uni, I'm meeting new students, that's going to be a much more sympathetically demanding week for me. And it's going to take me to maybe 2 to 3 weeks to start to settle with knowing the students and feeling more comfortable in the rhythm. If I'm turning up to uni, I'm teaching a brand new unit, that's going to be even more sympathetic. So essentially, at the start of the school term, at the start of the school semester, actually, we've got to recognize those first few weeks are going to be much more sympathetic. If you've moved house, if you've got a new job, if you've even changed within your job to new sort of activities, all of this is going to mean that you're going to be much more engaged in that experience. It could also be that you've broken up with a partner, and so those first few weeks are going to be much more sympathetic. It doesn't mean that you're adding necessarily people to your life or adding material. It's that it's different, that it's change, and that the nervous system has to kind of adapt. It's not as familiar. As soon as it's familiar, you just get these like, oh, yeah. And again, we can think of that as fitness. So again, if I'm exercising and doing things that I'm really familiar with, boop, boom. If I'm doing a brand new activity, I'm going to get much more sympathetic activation. So new, unfamiliar, novel, complex, all of those things, and also different. So if it's like I'm spending time with people who are really different to me, I'm going to have to be working a lot harder. Okay, so one of the things that's really important to kind of also recognize is that we're harmonizing around a kind of balance point, a set point within the nervous system, where the nervous system goes, oh yes, this is who I am. This is kind of my harmonious balance point, and then we're going to be harmonizing around that point. Okay, now you can harmonize by doing this. Okay, it's just that it might feel a little bit more crazy and wild, but that doesn't really on one level matter either. So you can be having these really quick shifts, right? It is much more taxing on the nervous system to have that, but sometimes we can get really concerned about these really quick shifts, and that can make us stressed and anxious when in fact it's like, oh no, this is the nervous system. It's doing such a great job offsetting me that actually this is okay for a patch of time. And we might kind of be like, oh, we're doing this, and then we kind of slowly find our way into a little bit more of a rhythm. So if we're starting with something new, oh, crash, oh, and then slowly we come into that harmonizing rhythm. And that's, again, we want to not become anxious about normal physiological processes that exist within the nervous system. Now, the other thing, of course, is that your body is going to give you a lot of signals, and you don't need to process these cognitively at all. It's really happening in the older parts of the brain. It's paying attention, and it's doing a great job of paying attention to the body. And so we can kind of also just let that do its job. But there will be moments where we start to become aware of what we're noticing in our body, and then that's going to give us information. What we want to avoid, or what we want to kind of get better at, is that we don't need to only start noticing our bodies when we're in a panic attack, or we're in a high pain episode, or we're in a high fatigue response. Of course, knowing that if there is a panic response or a shutdown response, that it's like, oh, that's, it is an intelligent response in the system. It's okay. It's not something we want to be have happening all the time, but it's actually okay. Same for crying. People will be like, oh no, I cried. And it's like, well, that's good. Nervous system is, helping to harmonize you. And so it's letting you kind of, have this cry response, and it will actually help you out. And we're sort of just looking to go, okay, can we find this kind of offset, that we can kind of introduce more into our day, and that actually we can even choose those offsets more intentionally. So in my work, I can choose to make the space, light and bright if I feel like I want a bit more energy, or I can make it kind of dark and quiet if I feel like I want to kind of slip into that parasympathetic quiet space a bit more. I can have little breaks through the day, so just sort of 3 to 5 minutes where I stop and I go to the toilet and I sort of potter around and kind of, feel like I kind of have just a bit of me time. But also that to kind of within the work that I'm doing, so if I'm teaching, that I just have these little pause moments. I just kind of go, oh, let's just take a little pause and just see how my body's feeling in this moment. Oh, yeah. Oh, yes, not breathing as easily as I could be. On my weight's a little bit more forward. I can feel those muscles are working hard, and my eyes, they'll start to settle. And it's amazing how just having these little moments of pausing in the experience of working, that's going to really harmonize that nervous system. Just drop it down a little bit. Or if I'm feeling really sluggish, that I just go, let's put some music on, let's put the radio on, let's open up the window and let the noises of the birds come in and put the lights on. So we just kind of lift it a little bit. And so that's just something to really think about, is how do we have these little natural kinds of offsets, or natural kinds of varieties through the day to keep us really contented and happy. And you'll find if you allow for more little moments of pausing, of a little tea break here, of a lunch break, that when you have these little pauses through your day, you'll have way more energy. You'll have way more capacity to actually turn up and do the things that really matter to you. Beautiful. So you can see there's so much beautiful richness in this work. It's quite, nuanced and complex. And for each of us, it's going to be something that we're just going to spend a little time noticing in our bodies and in the way that we interact with the world, and how different environments are really changing us, how we change environments. And that this is something to kind of keep being curious about over the breadth of your life. This is such an important element of my kind of way of being in the world. I am really paying attention to what does my nervous system need? And I literally ask myself, nervous system, what do you need right now? And I might be curled up in bed, kind of lying, asleep. And I think, oh, I should get up and exercise or, something like that. And I go to my body, what do you need? And I don't necessarily even hear words, but I can feel in my body heaviness, disinterest in movement. It's like, ugh. And I go, okay, cool, sleeping. All right, we'll keep sleeping then. Or I might be sitting kind of, for a long period of time, and I just check in and go, body, what do you need? And it's like, oh, I'm so sore. Just got to move my body. And I go, okay, cool, body wants to move. So we just want to check in, in the morning, through the day, as we're getting to bed. What do I need? Body, what do you need? Nervous system, what do you need? You just pause and you wait. You might hear kind of words, but I would encourage you to just sense the weight of you, sense the movement of you, sense whether you feel cold or hot, whether you feel agitated and you just want to move, or whether you just go, I just want to rest. Okay, cool, just have a rest. And that where possible, that you start to kind of make choices in your life. You look around your room and you go, how could I change this slightly so that it actually serves my nervous system in this moment? That you look at your day and go, maybe there could be a few little tea breaks or a few little outdoor, pop off for a walk breaks. If you're sitting at the computer a lot, you want to pop outside and go for a walk, just have these little breaks through the day. And this will help your nervous system to have that beautiful ebb and flow rather than getting stuck in one state. The other thing is, I suppose, to recognize that this is a very simple idea, and I've used some big words like sympathetic and parasympathetic, and you might just want to call it active and restorative. You might even think of yin and yang, so the Chinese kind of use these ideas of yin and yang, and I sometimes think, well, maybe that's sympathetic and parasympathetic. You might like to just think, of the big bright sun and the moon, or daytime and nighttime. We want a balance of these things. You might like to just think of it as hot and cool. We want some hot activities through the day, and we want some cool activities through the day, or some warm and cool, hot and cold. So we want that balance. If you have any questions, of course, please, write them into the comment box or send me an email. And I hope this has been really useful for you. Have a beautiful day. Bye.